Where is it? Hang on 1 second. Yeah, okay. Oh, sorry. Hi folks, David here with another one of those DM tips and tricks, advice videos for new and upcoming DMs, and today, funny enough, we are talking about, well, what they like to call rules overload. Apparently it is a pain point, whether or not you should know the rules off by heart, or how much time you should spend looking up rules during the middle of a game, and all of that kind of thing. So, I'll put this away. Let's have a natter about it. So the burning question for today is whether or not you, the DM, should know absolutely every rulebook in and out, know exactly where to look things up, and how much time you should spend actually double checking the rules, or just making a quick judgment call. Where is the balance point? That's a very good question. Let's break this one down. Should you be expected to know every rule off by heart and just be able to repeat it? No, of course you shouldn't. That's why you've got rulebooks there. How much time should you spend looking up rules? Realistically, it does depend on how important it is. But what I would say is that most times you will have a good grasp of the general rules. You know how to run encounters, you know how to work out to hit rolls, you know how to set difficulty values and things like that. So you shouldn't be needing to look those kind of things up. In some cases, what you do need to look up would be very specific things, possibly a spell description to make sure that you're not doing something wrong with it, or there's not an unintended side effect, or it could be something to do with a specific character class or a specific monster that you just need to double check. Some of those things are appropriate for you as a DM to look up, and some, well, quite frankly, can be farmed out. Let's first talk about what you should be doing. Yes, if you have prepared properly, then if you have an encounter, you will know roughly what those monsters are capable of doing. So you will have a good idea, and you will not necessarily have to look up rules. It can be a little bit different if it's something like a random encounter and you roll on the table and it comes up with something that you've hardly ever heard of or hardly used. Hey, okay, spend the time to look it up, see what they can and can't do, give the players the description of the monster, and carry on from there. That is definitely an appropriate use of your time. On occasion, you're going to be running a spellcaster, and yeah, if you want a particular effect, or to know from a pre-generated spell list what a particular spell can do and whether or not you can use it in the party, then yeah, a quick double check, that is not inappropriate. Obviously say to you guys, just need to check something, give me 2 seconds, work out what you're doing amongst yourselves. If, however, it is a player that's doing it, they are going to have far more familiarity with what their player can and can't do, what kind of bonuses apply during a particular situation, what kind of special rules are going to be in effect, depending on the circumstances of what they have stated that their character is going to be doing. So if they're the ones casting the spell, they're the ones that should be looking it up and telling you. And while they're busy doing that, you can deal with somebody else and keep the flow of the game going. Sometimes it could be a particular piece of equipment or a particular skill that a character has. Again, get them to do the looking up. If they believe it is pertinent, ask the question, is there a specific rule for this? You want to hide in shadows, as an example. I mean, everyone knows about hide in shadows, but that is what they have in particular asked to do. Sweet, it's noted, that's what you want to do. Look it up, see what your chances are. While you're busy doing that, deal with somebody else. That keeps the pace of the game going. Now, you can impose a time limit. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, because at the end of the day, the player does know their character, and if they believe that there is a specific rule, then it is probably better to go with the rules as written, because they have been balanced and play tested, rather than you making a gut feeling judgment call. I have certainly been on the receiving end of what I believe to be a bad DM call when I know that in the case of the particular character that I was playing at the time, there was a specific rule that dealt with the situation. It was to do with archery, and I believe it was covered under special equipment in the Thieves' Handbook. And I grabbed it and I pointed it out to the DM, and they just turned around and said, no, I don't believe it. Now, bearing in mind that we're talking about a Dungeons & Dragons game where you believe that people can snap their fingers and cast a fireball and blow, 50 people up, but an archery rule that is written down in the rules they don't believe. Yeah, okay. So if the rules are there and the player can find them and know that they exist, then it is probably better to go along with that. It is going to be a judgment call, and I guess reading the table whether or not other people are starting to get impatient. If the player is finding it difficult to actually find the particular rule, or they're not 100% certain where it is, I'll make a judgment call on it this time to keep the game flowing. Or, as I've said prior, there's other people around the table. You can find out what it is that they're doing and adjudicate their actions and come back to this player, depending on whereabout in the turn sequence that their particular action is. But if it's going to take half an hour for them to actually find the rule, or suddenly realise, oh, maybe I don't have that book, maybe I found it in an obscure article online or something like that, then nobody's going to be particularly happy with that. So yeah, keep in the back of your mind, if it feels as if it's taking too long, maybe it is taking too long. And that is the point to make a judgment call. When it comes to actual judgment calls, as opposed to the rules, that is a very different kettle of fish. And it does very much depend on the play style that you are going for within your campaign, and the play style, I guess, that back in session 0 you have agreed with your players. If it is very dark and gritty and realistic, and there isn't a huge amount of fantasy element in there, certainly on that side of thing, you know the way physics works. You know that people aren't capable necessarily of doing super heroic actions. And if suddenly one of your party members wants to pull something like that out of the hat, yeah, okay, adjudicate against it. But my personal take is that I do not like turning around and saying that's impossible. Unless, of course, it is, they've got no magic and they want to suddenly leap from a standing start up to the top of a 3-story building. Of course they can't do that. That one is dead easy to adjudicate. One of the rules of thumb that I always use is, does this look good on film? Again, a different character of mine, Swashbuckler, the one that I am currently playing. There has been an occasion where there was a sort of like sewer chute. It was wet, slimy, monster was at the bottom. He wanted to essentially get into combat as quickly as possible. Somebody dropped a shield, grabbed a shield, slid down the ramp, did a triple somersault and ran the monster through. Is that the kind of thing that looks good on film? Yes, of course it is. Is that the kind of thing that you would expect a heroic swashbuckler to do? Of course, you've seen that kind of thing in the movies. Legolas did pretty much exactly the same at the Battle of Helm's Deep. Rode a shield down a staircase rather than a chute while firing arrows. So of course it's possible. All you've got to do is say, how difficult is it? Make them roll, and if they pull it off, they pull it off. Moral of that one is, don't say no, you can't, unless it's really obvious they can't. Assign a difficulty level, and if it's really difficult, make it a difficult difficulty level. I guess what it comes down to is that there is a time and a place for making sure that you're following the rules, and a time and a place where you can get away with being a little bit more fast and loose. If you're talking about a specific effect, like a spell or the abilities of a monster, for consistency purposes, go with the rules as written and take the time to either get your players or look it up yourself, depending on what it is that's being looked up. But if it comes to adjudicating a particular action and you're not 100% certain, then yeah, assign a difficulty, go with the ruling. If they manage to pull it off, they pull it off. If they don't, they don't. That's fine. And do remember that Google is your friend in most cases, because these kind of questions have been hashed over time after time on the web and in player forums and things like that. You can type a quick Google search, how high can my ranger jump? And within seconds you're going to get an answer. That is going to be far quicker than double checking to make sure that a rule for jumping is in the ranger's handbook, or it's in the dungeon master's guide, or is it in the player's guide and everybody's looking under J for jumping, or is it under R for ranger. Google it. It'll give you something. Hey, it may not necessarily get it correct. Google AI, like any AI, should be double checked by a human. It might be able to give you a page reference number, in which case, hey, sweet, quickly look it up in the relevant volume and you're all sorted. You've actually got the rules there. But if not, then it's going to have at least come up with what appears to be the consensus of opinion around DMs and players around the world across the years that have posted that kind of thing on forums. So do remember that while, yeah, we don't necessarily like AI, especially in terms of AI DMs, AI can be our friend in terms of doing a quick search on rule books and coming up with the relevant entry. That is probably one of the big advances that has happened compared to back when I first started DMing and the rules were all new and shiny and I wasn't 100% certain what I was doing, and everything did have to be manually checked page by page because you weren't 100% certain what was in the rules and what you had to make a judgment call on. Anyway, I hope that that piece of advice has been of some use to somebody out there, especially that Google one. Just thought of that off the top of my head, but I'll be perfectly honest, it is the kind of thing that we have been doing for the new 5th edition stuff because we're simply not familiar with those rule books. When it comes to the 2nd edition rule books, we've got multiple players sitting around the table that know those books off the top of their head, and I can turn around and go, oh, such and such a table, can you remember what page it's on? And somebody will go, oh, 167. Get a life, guys. But the new version we are not that familiar with, and a quick Google search, to be perfectly honest, does pay dividends, certainly in terms of being able to keep things quicker where realistically we would be struggling to look up a particular rule, especially the way the 5th edition stuff is laid out. But you've already heard me rant about that. Anyway, I am going to leave this particular video right there because I've probably waffled on far too long at the end of it. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you get any kind of use out of this kind of content, please do those lovely social media things. Like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And I will leave this one until I see you anon. Toodle pip for now.